I'm Ashton Addison from the Crypto Coin Show, and today on Blockchain Interviews with Mirza Uddin, Head of Business Development from Injective Labs. Mirza, welcome to the show, and thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Excited to dive into all the latest about Injective and the blockchain ecosystem. I've been a fan for a few years, and I know it has so much potential. I think not enough people probably know about it, and I want to learn more because I know you guys are involved in every sector of Web3 and also connecting to all of the different blockchain ecosystems as well. I would love to start off our conversation by getting sort of a high level explainer on how you would explain Injective to somebody who isn't familiar, and then we can dive into all of those details.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thanks for having me. And I guess it's good for the viewers to get context that I can't see Addison, so I'm speaking into a blank screen. So in case my expressions or anything look weird, that's the context. Okay, cool. So diving in, the best way to understand sort of Injective is it's a plug and play blockchain. What that means is we provide developers with a number of different plug and play tools. So let's say an on-chain order book, a lending module, an RWA module. So when you come on to any other chain, you have to build all of these things from scratch, right? So
Mm,
let's say you want to build a new platform for tokenization. You probably have to spend months and months building these smart contracts, developing it, auditing it, and then launching it, right? We just think that's way too much time and way too expensive. So what we did instead is we created a number of different templates, almost like a WordPress, right? If you're familiar with WordPress or Squarespace from the world of Web 2. So we give you these templates. So when you come onto Injective, you can launch these interesting applications in a day or two, right? So it's
mm,
very fast. And the other thing that makes Injective very different, it's a blockchain that's specifically built for finance. So all the tools, all the templates we provide are so that you can build very interesting lending apps or RWA apps very, very quickly. And the last focal point about Injective that's interesting is it has this shared liquidity layer. So what we've done over the past few years is integrate a number of these larger institutions. So let's say guys like Galaxy Digital, guys like IMC Trading, large sort of Web2 institutions, and they're providing liquidity to this chain 24/7. So let's say you build a new DEX on Injective, you can just have liquidity on there from day one. You don't have to give out crazy farming rewards. You don't need to sort of
mhm.
bend over backwards for these different market makers or institutions. So that's really the bread and butter of Injective. We've been around a while. Our mainnet has been live for 3 years now. We're backed by some of the coolest people in the industry, including Binance, Pantera, Mark Cuban. And what else can I tell you? We are actually a decently big team. We have 65 people on the team now, with the main HQ here in New York, which I'm allowed to say now because of the new regulatory landscape. It's okay to say that, hey, we are American. So yeah, that's sort of the high level on Injective.
It's very cool. And yeah, Made in USA is all the rage for blockchains in 2025. So I'm excited to see where that goes. And it's great to hear about the ease of development for applications on the blockchain, and then also the fact that there's capital there ready to go. I think both of those 2 points are pain points for blockchains that are trying to break through to be multi-billion dollar valuations that have tons of daily active users with the small amount of people that are deep in crypto compared to traditional finance and the world. So would you say that creating apps is that's obviously one of the main touch points that needs to happen first before people can come on? You need to have developers that choose Injective for their application when there's all these different blockchains to choose from. Um, but maybe you can also put it on multiple blockchains. So how do you look
Yeah.
at that process in developers choosing Injective to build their applications?
Yeah. So this is a question we think about daily, right? Like as an L1, there's so many different L1s and L2s to choose from. Our sort of focus is very niche, right? So if you're building something in the Web3 finance space, come talk to us because we likely have tools that help you get started way faster, right? Because of the templates, because of the liquidity. But that goes the other way too, right? If you're building a very, very cool gaming application or a metaverse application, it's likely not the best place, right? Like because we can't provide you anything special that a Solana or an Arbitrum cannot. Right. But if you're building something along the lines of lending or DEXs or RWAs, we personally think we're the best people for that, right? Because we give you the
Mhm.
templates, we give you the liquidity. And most importantly, what Injective has focused on is making sure you connect the entire world of blockchains, right? So one thing we really pride ourselves on is we have access to assets from all these other chains. Like we built some of the bridges ourselves to chains like Ethereum, but we also work with guys like Wormhole and Layer Zero and Axelar, so that now we're able to have things like Solana or Cosmos or Arbitrum tokens all under one roof.
Mm.
So regardless of what application you might be building, you don't have to pick and choose, right? You have access to ERC20 assets, CW20 assets, NFTs, anything you might want, you have access to it on Injective to build your app. The other thing I think we focused a lot on is sort of the onboarding rails, right? So being able to come onto Injective with fiat, being able to use Injective from any sex and being able to come from those sexes to Injective. So creating those direct routes and bridges. The ideal scenario is, let's say you build an application. Now you can onboard users that are Web2 users. So you can sign with Google. You can onboard from any asset from any chain. You can onboard from any sex. So the more you break down these barriers to development with the plug and play tools or liquidity plus these onboarding rails, the easier it becomes for you to build these apps, right? Because you might build a very, very cool DEX, but if users can come on and if the fees
Mhm.
are high or it's not
Mhm.
fast, no one's going to use it, right? Like you spent all that time and effort for nothing. So our goal here and what we've been building towards is making those rails as seamless as possible for the end users. So we leave it to the application developer to build their app, of course, but once they build that app, it's easy for them to onboard those users because of the work that we've done internally. The final point I'll mention is Injective is also accessible from different wallets. So whether you using MetaMask or Kepler or even Phantom Wallet, you can sign transactions on Injective. So again, you don't have to pick and choose. You don't have to download some random wallet
Mhm.
to access us. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that compatibility with the different sexes, the different wallets, different applications is key because there's still so many people that have yet to dive into the inner depths of Bitcoin and then Ethereum, and then realizing the
Yeah.
potential for layer one blockchains. You got to make it as easy as possible to get people in and be like, okay, Injective. And what do you think? Is it just the fact that there are fiat on ramps to get people in? I feel like you need a killer dApp that is like,
Yeah.
hey, everyone's using this. This is something that, finance related. I'm personally interested in the finance apps. It sounds like that's where the focus is. Something where you can stake or lend very easily, and people, they see the application and then they see, okay, it's on Injective and it's easy to get involved.
Correct. 100%. Like that's the bread and butter, right? So I think what also makes us pretty unique is we didn't just build a chain. We also actually build a lot of the products and some of the dApps ourselves internally. Some of the products is like the Injective Hub, where you can come and stake and earn one of the highest APYs out there. I think our staking ratio is also one of the highest out there right now. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
60% of the total supply is staked, just because of how easy it is. It's like a one-click
Mm-hmm.
solution to sort of click, and that's easy for a new user to understand. It's like, oh, I can just keep my assets here and earn like yield, right?
Mm-hmm.
The killer dApp that we built internally is called Helix, which is our sort of flagship derivatives DEX. And Helix actually has a lot of interesting products and tools. Right now, it's processed something like $45 billion to date, right? Which is a great sort of showcase of the power of sort of Injective. And people are trading on this every single day, not just sort of perpetuals or spot pairs.
Mm-hmm.
You can trade different pairs like Solana, Cosmos, Ethereum,
Mm-hmm.
all under one DEX, but also interesting tokenized assets. We released one today, for instance, where it's an AI index where we took some of the biggest AI tokens like Fetch AI or BitTensor or AI16Z, and we combined it with some of the biggest stocks out there, like AI stocks. So
Wow.
Palantir or NVIDIA into one index product. And these types of cool products is what we like to experiment with because the goal of crypto is not just to replicate TradFi on chain. In my opinion, it's to create new products that you wouldn't find, or that's not possible in TradFi, right? Like you're never going to find an index like this on Robinhood, probably, or at least not now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we really shine by providing these interesting products. We're providing sort of users with use cases that they'll come onto Injective for. They're not coming onto Injective because it's a shiny new L1. They're coming
Mhm.
here because they want to access these tokenized assets or these perps, or they don't feel like bridging into 50 different chains to access their assets. They want to have all assets, regardless of chain, under one roof. Um, and that's where we really shine. And I think that differentiates us from many other L1s because we there's this like cheesy saying in Web2, right? Like you got to eat your own dog food. So we kind of do that by building some of the dApps ourselves and trying it
Yeah.
out and getting the users ourselves, because then we realize what the pain points are and we're able to fix it. Whereas I think most L1s arrive at it from a different angle where they build the infrastructure and they leave it to the developers to build the apps. Injective initially was building the app and realized, hey, we need to build an L1 around this to make our app very performant. So it just is a different methodology. And that, in my opinion, has helped us in terms of just approaching the L1 game in a very different way.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great way of going about it because you need applications. If you build a layer one blockchain that has no apps and you're just saying, okay, go at it, community, somebody else build something,
Yeah.
then you're fighting an uphill battle. But to have the application first and then build the underlying infrastructure for it, it sounds like the right way to go about it. And with that, tokenized AI index that you're talking about. That sounds really cool. I have not seen that
Yeah.
in crypto, to be combining TradFi tokenization with AI. I can imagine, I've never seen anything innovative like that. But with that, just the tokenization of stocks in general, I feel like a lot needs to be done to grow that sector because there's still millions and millions of people trading on the traditional stock market that don't understand the benefits of blockchain and that it could be instant settlement with lower fees and faster. And something needs to be done in just getting that. Never mind including the crypto assets as well, which I think is great. Where do you think about where tokenization is at right now of traditional financial instruments, just getting those people that are trading those onto the blockchain?
Yeah, I think so. My honest thought process here is there's a huge amount of latent demand for asset types like this, right? So this was a big thing. If you remember back in the day, this is when I was getting started at Injective, right? Back in 2020, there was a huge like GameStop saga where like GameStop stock was obviously getting short squeezed, and then platforms like Robinhood would stop you from trading it. And then many retail people were getting annoyed. It's like, hey, where can I trade this thing without restriction? And then at that time, Injective was actually running its testnet, and we listed a lot of these stocks on our testnet, like Tesla stock, and GameStop stock, and there was huge demand. I think we got hundreds of millions of dollars traded in just those assets alone, um, like every single day, which is really insane. But then as soon as we're about to launch mainnet, our lawyers come back and said, hey, you can't do this. It might not be legal, blah, blah, blah. So we had to kind of stop that. And that's sort of the sort of like route we've been in the last 4 years, right? Under the
Mm-hmm.
prior administration, like regardless of
Mm-hmm.
your political affiliation, like I think we can all agree, like it was very hard to do anything in crypto, especially in America. So
Mm-hmm.
even though the tool sets for tokenizing these assets, it's actually not that hard. Like
Mm-hmm.
from a technical
Mm-hmm.
standpoint, all you probably need are like price feeds or a
Mm-hmm.
custodian who will help custody these assets, and then you can sort of create a representation of it on the blockchain. It's very easy,
Mm-hmm.
actually. The main issue is the regulatory hurdle behind it, right? And that's why even though we had these cool ideas like this AI index, we couldn't launch it previously. But due to the new president, due to like the new administration, we're able to actually do a bit more in a flexible way. And we can just experiment more, right? Because now we're able to create products that were unheard of. Like, yes, you can go onto your Robinhood account or Charles Schwab account and probably get an ETF that tracks AI stocks. But what we noticed is a lot of the crypto tokens these days, especially as crypto's gotten much more mainstream, in my opinion, they're very correlated with the macro markets, right? So when
Mm-hmm.
the FOMC announces something,
Mm-hmm.
stocks will either go up or down, and crypto will pretty much follow the same way. And this was very noticeable like this past week, right? If you look at the huge like saga with DeepSeek, right? Like DeepSeek came out and then Nvidia stock plummeted, right? But
Mhm.
also interestingly, all the AI tokens plummeted too, right? Like AI
Mhm.
16Z, virtuals, all of them went the same way. So what we realized is if we had an index product that tracks both or has all exposure in one, you're likely going to be very, very correlated. So when we ran the experiments, there was a huge beta between these different AI tokens and these AI stocks. So it was only a matter of time before someone was going to create it. So we just basically asked ourselves, why not us, right? And we just launched it this morning, and already I'm seeing like volume numbers spike for this asset class because I think a lot of people want exposure, but they don't want to pick and choose, right? Similar to ETFs, right? Like think about traditional ETFs. I don't want to personally sit there picking stocks because that's not my game. I'd rather just buy an ETF that tracks like 100 of these things and just let the market do its thing, because I'm likely not smarter than the market. The idea behind this index is the same. It's like you don't have to pick AI16Z or NVIDIA. You don't have to allocate, like this index will correlate or sort of allocate to a number of these assets. So you don't have to sit there and pick and choose between stocks and crypto. Once we have more products like this, you'll notice that individuals will no longer want to use their traditional centralized rails because then it starts to become a moot point. I think what crypto was getting wrong before is that we were tokenizing things, in my opinion, for the sake of tokenizing things, which is not as interesting, right? Like a big product, and I have no issue with it, right? Like is like tokenized treasuries today in crypto. But if you really think about it, most people can access tokenized treasuries through JP Morgan, through their traditional sort of brokerage. What's the point of having this representation, right? And that's my point on a number of these things. Like, what's the point of having the same one-to-one thing you can find in TradFi? Like, for crypto to thrive, you need to create net new products that will make users come on or onboard, because the onboarding process for crypto is still such a pain, right? You need to have like a huge reason, like you were saying before, a huge app or a huge use case for you to onboard. So that's really what this AI index represents. It's like, it's, in my opinion, giving people a reason to onboard, because it's like, no matter where you go, you can't find this. And we plan on doing a lot more in the coming weeks and months around tokenization and experimenting with a lot of these like tokenized stocks and indices. I think this is just like the start.
It's very cool, Mirza. And I think the AI index is like a perfect example of something that I would think, I want to invest in ETF, and everyone knows, they don't really understand the inner depths of it, but they see, okay, AI is the future, and there's this huge investments going on with AI, but I don't know about all the different tokens and everything. It's so much research to try and beat the market. To be able to invest in an AI index that has crypto and traditional AI companies is an amazing product. So thank you for coming out with that. I'm definitely going to check it. I saw the announcement of it. So, and I think there's a lot to be done in terms of AI actually integrating in with blockchain. What we've seen a lot in the last 6 months to a year with these different AI stocks actually coming out with functionality where AI helps trade or AI agents. What do you think about the actual functionality of AI with blockchain and how they're going to intermingle?
That's a very good question. I think we're seeing like the very, very first innings of this, right? I think a lot of it, just to be very honest and candid, I think a lot of it is vaporware, right? I think it's like a narrative, and a lot of people are chasing the trend. But within that, whenever there's a lot of vaporware, at least 5% of projects are doing something real. In my opinion, some of the agents that I think are very interesting are allowing you to, let's say, put in money and the agent will trade on your behalf, right? That in itself is a very, very cool use case, because it's following the trend, it's reading the charts and being able to trade on your behalf. And the other thing that's really cool is agents that are able to sort of chat on social media. I think that's been very proven, because now you can have like sort of a legion of KOLs or a legion of people talking about your project or interacting with users. I think those are like sort of, that's why I say we're in the first innings, because these might seem interesting, but they're very, very simple products, right? Like they're not very complicated. But I think there's a lot of cool experimentation being done. I think what Eliza's done, what Virtuals is doing, Injective actually built an AI module ourselves with Eliza that allows you to create agents, right? I think what we need right now is a bit more experimentation with the infra, because I think the infra exists, but people are not to be mean, like chasing like a hype train to
Hmm.
make money. So maybe they're being a bit myopic on what AI and crypto can sort of do together. But I envision in the next few years this will change because
Hmm.
crypto was sort of the same too, right? In 2017, these projects were just white papers. They actually had nothing. And then we saw experimentation with DeFi, and now we actually have a lot of cool on-chain products and users and use cases. So AI will probably follow a similar direction. I think we're in like the 2017 cycle for AI
Hmm.
where numbers going up, so people are excited, but there's behind the scenes not a lot going on. It's a lot of vaporware. But I think over the coming years, you'll see sort of AI and blockchain be fundamentally integrated, where people won't have to think that you're an AI project or building an AI agent. It's just fundamentally embedded onto the chain. So whether you might be using it for trading, whether you might be using it as a chat app, whether you are using it as a way to launch new tokens where you can sort of give via natural language just functions like, hey, create a token with this much supply, and etc. Right? And it will mint that token for you, right? So it will just make life easier, in my opinion, where you won't even notice that it's AI. It's like, oh, this is just how you launch a token, right? Like I don't have to interact with all these smart contracts to launch a token or to launch a new ICO. I can just do it by natural language command, which I think will make crypto explode because right now the biggest barrier to entry for crypto is the onboarding rails again, right? Not
Hmm.
just for users, but also for developers. Like unless you know how to code in Solidity or how to code in
Hmm.
Rust, you're probably not going to be able to mint a token. You're not going to be able to do anything in crypto. But but imagine like you or me could just go into a chat app, give it commands, and boom, you have a token, you have a project,
Hmm.
you have a dApp. That'd be huge, and we'd see sort of an explosion. Whether you think that's good or bad, an explosion in number of tokens, in number of projects, in experimentation that can be done in crypto. So I'm mostly excited for that part of AI and crypto.
Yeah, no, it's great insights. I think that there is huge potential, and I think you're right that there is a lot of vaporware or just buzz around AI agents, and people are speculating on it, but they don't really know what it can do, or it really can't do much compared to what it will be able to do in the next coming years when it's flushed out. I think a lot of people are using uh, LLMs in for traditional work, and they're relying on it, and they see,
Yeah.
okay, AI is really going to help us get work done, but that connection of getting it into your portfolio, trading for you, or advising on how to rebalance, that connection still needs to be made. And you said there's 5% of companies that are actually working on great fundamentals. And
Yeah.
I think it takes time. You know, it's not something that can be built overnight, but it will gradually be built faster and faster. Where once somebody comes up with a flagship dApp that has AI, then that it will be known all along that, you know, AI was meant to help improve blockchain and trading and finance overall.
Yeah. No, well put, well put. I think that's fantastic, like summary. Yeah, agreed.
Mm-hmm. You know, one thing I wanted to go back to, which is sort of more on the fundamental side, is with financial applications on Injective as well, and DeFi. One of the most important parts of that is managing risk, and a lot of the time, one of the assets is a stable coin, because you're already, you know, trying to, if you're setting up a liquidity pool, having stable coins is essential to decentralized finance. How does that work on Injective? You know, do you use the main stable coins that have a high market cap? Are there stablecoins that are built for Injective?
Yeah, agree. That's a very, very good question. It's something I think about a lot. I think most people in crypto, even to this day, stable coins are the main access point into crypto, right? Period. Like regardless of whatever cool project or product you might be working on, an average user probably doesn't want to see their main asset that they're bridging over go up and down tremendously. That being said, Injective basically realized that we need to support every single stablecoin out there. If you
Hmm.
really want to be this blockchain for finance, you can't pick and choose. So yes, we support the major ones like USDT or USDC, but I think what's becoming interesting is users, especially smart users, are starting to realize, why would I hold USDT or USDC when I can be earning yield? Because treasury
Hmm.
yields are still quite high. You could
Hmm.
even open up a normal Robinhood or Marcus account and get like 4%, I believe, right now.
Hmm.
But right now, most of these companies, not to call anyone out, are sort of just keeping that yield, right? So what we're seeing
Hmm.
experimentations on now, especially with what Ondo's doing, what Agora is doing, what Mountain Protocol is doing is they give that yield back to the user, right? Through different variations and different functions. Ondo will give you the treasury yield. Agora basically also gives you some of that yield that they generate, I think 80% of the yield. Mountain Protocol does something similar. So Injective today has leaned a lot into this. So we support today the Ondo token, the Mountain Protocol token, as well as Agora's AUSD. Because now users can use it to trade things like perps on Helix, while at the same time earning yield on the back end, right? Which changes the game, in my opinion. And I think sooner or later, the big ones, like likely USDT and USDC, will also have to start doing it, because I think that's where the market is headed. But yeah, just as a quick TLDR on your question, I think our goal is to support every single stablecoin, and a lot of these are just native to Injective as well. Like Agora natively launched on Injective, I think just not even 10 days ago, and already more than $10 million has been minted on the chain. So there's significant demand for these assets, where it's a lot of users are basically saying like, why not just transfer my USDT over into this other token that's also a stable coin and back, but I'm earning the yield on top. So yeah, that's my take on where the industry might be headed with stable coins.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. I feel like in an open market where people can choose what stablecoin and whether they want to just stick with the big one, or they actually see the potential in the yield, getting a higher yield on stablecoins, which is more of a safe kind of return. I think it's important to have the option, if they want, to have that working on the blockchain. So that's very cool. Now, Mirza, we don't have a lot of time left, but I want to look forward to 2025. You mentioned at the beginning, now this new administration is just opening the doors for innovation. And it's not that the technology wasn't there, it was just that the regulation, or the bureaucracy, is sort of inhibiting innovation. With those floodgates now opening, what are some of the things that Injective is working on in 2025 that they're looking to release out and continue innovating in the industry?
Yeah, 100%. So I'll answer in a few different ways. So the first way, on the regulatory side, I think you're going to see a lot more tokenization happening on Injective. We pride ourselves on this. We were one of the first experimenters, in my opinion, with tokenizing things like stocks on chain. So you're going to see way more experimentation there with tokenization of real world assets. And indices and new sort of financial products, right? Like the AI index we launched today. So you're going to see a lot more experimentation there. You're also going to see the developer sort of mindshare increase tremendously on Injective, in my opinion, because previously we only had this WASM VM layer, where users were able to come and build apps with Rust. But the developer mindshare, if you really think about it, for WASM is not as high as EVM or even SVM these days. So what we did over the last sort of year and a half is experiment with these other VMs being able to work with Injective. So the process was simple. With EVM, last year we launched a rollup called InEVM, where you were able to build apps in Solidity. And there was tremendous demand for this rollup alone. So what we realized is, why not just integrate, since there's so much demand, into the native chain, a new VM environment. So if Injective can become this multi-VM world, it wouldn't matter if the developer is familiar with Solidity or Rust, or SVM or any other sort of VM layer, they can build on Injective. So yesterday we announced that for the last year, we've been working on building EVM natively into Injective. So all the cool things I mentioned earlier, like the modules, the liquidity, you can access it regardless of what VM you're using, regardless of what token you come in with, which is great for developer mindshare. So I think you're going to see the ecosystem explode, because most apps, even to this day, are held by the world of EVM. And we actually made our EVM quite performant. So based on our sort of testing and mainnet simulated conditions, we're about 1,200% faster and more performant than most of the existing sort of EVMs out there, like Base, etc., which I think is really cool. But our goal is not just to build a performant EVM, it's to build this multi-VM world. So EVM is up next. And right now, the same thing we did with the EVM rollup last year, we're building on the SVM side with a company called Sonic. They're a major project in the Solana ecosystem. So they're working with us to build a rollup on Injective. And after we see good traction there, which I think we will also embed SVM into the core architecture of Injective. So what we really want to do is break down the barriers. So if you want to build a finance app, it shouldn't matter which language or programming language you're familiar with. You can come and build on Injective, tokenize assets, access the liquidity. So really excited about this sort of multi-VM initiative we have going on in 2025.
Very cool. And what's the best way for people to get started in Injective if they're in crypto, but they haven't really got deep into it? Is it through the killer dApp or testing out these bridges?
Yeah, the easiest way, like visit the Injective Hub. It's sort of like your gateway into Injective. We have some cool updates coming on it as well. So you can find staking there. You can see a list of all the applications there. Obviously, if you need help to get started, you can always like reach out via socials. We're very, very active across Twitter, Discord. The handle is at Injective across all platforms. So that's also a good way. Like if you want the community to help you or our community managers to help you get started. It really depends what you want. Like if you want to earn passive yield via staking, you could do that on the Injective Hub. But I think the best way to get started is to experiment with some of the apps on Injective, whether it be Helix, whether it be Hydro, which is for liquid staking, whether it be the lending apps like Neptune. Just figure out what your use case might be, like look into that app, and then you'll quickly realize how easy it is to onboard onto Injective, how fast and cheap it is once you get on, because there aren't any gas fees. You can just complete transactions in like a block time of under a second. So you'll find that it's a very, very performant chain. And it's going to get a lot better this year.
That's amazing. I'm looking forward to these next parts of the growth. And I know I've tried it out a little bit. The ecosystem is pretty intuitive. I'm going to leave a link to the Injective Hub and the socials that you mentioned as well in the show notes below. I appreciate your insights into the industry, Mirza. I'm really excited for the further tokenization of the financial assets personally, and just connecting to all the other blockchains. Wishing you and the team all the best on the growth of Injective throughout this year, and I would love to follow up in the near future.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.